I'm Selena, 32, once labeled the ugly college dropout by my own family. 5 years ago, they cut me off completely when I left pre-med school to pursue art. Depression nearly broke me, but I rebuilt my life piece by piece. Never expected to see them again until I walked into my sister's graduation as the guest lecturer. The shock on their faces when they realized who I'd become was worth every tear I'd shed. If you've ever been underestimated, you know that feeling. Let me know where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and join me as I reveal how family wounds can become your greatest strength. My childhood home in Connecticut looked perfect from the outside. A sprawling colonial with manicured lawns in an exclusive neighborhood where success wasn't just expected, it was the minimum requirement. My father Thomas was a renowned cardiothoracic surgeon whose patients included celebrities and politicians. My mother Diana commanded respect as one of the top corporate attorneys in New England. Their marriage produced two daughters, me and my sister Allison, 4 years younger. From my earliest memories, the difference in how we were treated was subtle but unmistakable. Family photos tell the story plainly. Allison always front and center, her golden curls catching the light while I stood slightly to the side, my ordinary brown hair and awkward smile making me fade into the background. Not that I was unattractive, just unremarkable compared to my sister's natural beauty that turned heads even when she was young. Allison has your mother's bone structure, relatives would comment at gatherings. She'll break hearts someday. No one ever commented on my appearance, except my grandmother Ruth, who would whisper, "You have an artist's eyes, Selena. You see the world differently, and that's a gift." But in our household, academic achievement was the only currency that mattered. I discovered early that I had an aptitude for math and science, and my parents seized upon this like prospectors finding gold. By middle school, my future was planned without my input. I would attend an Ivy League school, go to medical school, and follow in my father's footsteps. "You have the brain for medicine," my father would say, the closest thing to a compliment I ever received. "Don't waste it." I threw myself into academics, maintaining a perfect 4.0 GPA through middle school and into high school. My parents' rare moments of approval came only after report cards or academic awards. Meanwhile, Allison seemed to float effortlessly through school, earning top grades, while also being homecoming princess, captain of the debate team, and everyone's favorite. The pressure began taking its toll during my junior year of high school. I started experiencing insomnia before tests. My stomach would knot so tightly during exams that I sometimes had to run to the bathroom. But I never let my grades slip, not even once. My sanctuary was my grandmother Ruth's home. She had been an art teacher before retirement, and her small house was filled with paintings and sculptures. Every Sunday, while my parents believed I was studying at the library, I went to Grandma Ruth's where she taught me to paint and draw. "You have a natural gift for composition," she told me. "The way you blend colors shows how deeply you feel the world." In her sunlit studio, I created art that expressed all the emotions I had to bottle up at home. She kept my paintings in a special portfolio hidden from my parents. "Someday," she would say, "you'll find the courage to follow your heart." Grandma Ruth passed away during my senior year of high school, just months before college applications were due. Her loss devastated me, but also ignited a quiet rebellion. While completing applications to prestigious pre-med programs, as my parents expected, I secretly applied to several art schools as well, using money I'd saved from babysitting to pay the application fees. When the acceptances came in, including one from a renowned art institute, I briefly considered defying my parents. But the full scholarship to my father's alma mater for pre-med made the decision for me. The art school acceptance letter went into the box of my grandmother's belongings that I kept hidden in my closet, a dream deferred but not forgotten. The night before leaving for college, I snuck into our family room and studied the dozens of framed family photos. Not one showed my artwork or celebrated my individual talents. Every image reinforced our family narrative. Allison was the star, and I was the reliable supporting character, whose purpose was to become a doctor and extend my father's legacy. I promised myself that somehow, someday, I would find a way to be more than just an extension of my parents' ambitions. I had no idea then how painful that journey would be. The pristine brick buildings of my father's alma mater intimidated me from the moment I arrived. Students moved with purpose, many the children of alumni their futures as secure as their trust funds. I carried the weight of being Thomas Harper's daughter, a legacy expected to excel in pre-med, just as he had 30 years earlier. My dorm room offered the first surprise Jessica Ramirez, a scholarship student from Arizona, with vibrant purple-tipped hair and an infectious laugh. Unlike the perfectly polished people in my parents' circle, Jessica spoke her mind and pursued her passions unapologetically. Psychology major, she announced when we met. I want to understand why people do the crazy things they do. She noticed my careful unpacking of art supplies I'd hidden at the bottom of my suitcase. You an artist? She asked. No, I replied automatically. Just a hobby. I'm pre-med. You can be both, you know, she said, raising an eyebrow. Nobody's just one thing. That simple statement landed like a revelation. In my family's world, you were either successful in an approved profession or you were a failure. There was no middle ground. I approached my first semester with military discipline. My schedule was brutal biology, chemistry, calculus, English composition, and introduction to medical ethics. I created detailed study schedules, color-coded notes, and joined the pre-med society as expected. But on Wednesday evenings, I did something just for me. I registered for a non-credit art class that met in the campus studio from 7 to 9 p.m. I told my parents it was a study group. For those 2 hours weekly, I could breathe. The familiar smell of paint and the scratch of charcoal on paper reminded me of Grandma Ruth's studio, and the only times I'd felt truly seen. My first semester grades were perfect, exactly as required. My father sent a rare text of approval. Keep this up, and Johns Hopkins will be calling. But beneath the academic success, fault lines were forming. I started having nightmares about failed exams. My appetite diminished. The campus counseling center became a weekly stop, though I never told my therapist the full truth about the pressure I felt. I couldn't admit even to myself that I was crumbling. Second semester brought organic chemistry, the notorious weed out course for pre-med students. Despite studying harder than anyone I knew, the concepts refused to click in my mind. My art, meanwhile, was flourishing. My Wednesday instructor pulled me aside one evening. Have you considered changing your major? Your technical skill combined with your emotional depth is extraordinary. I laughed as if it were absurd, even as something inside me ached at the possibility. The midterm for organic chemistry fell on a rainy Thursday in March. I'd studied for weeks, slept barely 3 hours a night, and still felt unprepared. Sitting in the lecture hall, the questions swam before my eyes. My heart raced, sweat beaded on my forehead, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. The room tilted sideways. I remember standing, dropping my pencil, and then nothing. I woke in the campus health center. Panic attack, the doctor explained. Quite severe. Has this happened before? No. I lied, not counting the milder episodes I'd hidden for months. The failed midterm required a call home. My father's disappointment came through the phone like ice water. Everyone struggles with organic chemistry, he said. You just need to work harder. Your cousin managed an A-, and she's not even as bright as you. My mother added, perhaps fewer distractions. What's this art class Jessica mentioned when we called your dorm? I felt betrayed that Jessica had mentioned it, though I later learned they had pressured her for information about my erratic behavior. It's just stress relief, I defended weakly. You don't have time for hobbies, my father declared. Medicine requires sacrifice. The summer between freshman and sophomore years was torture. I was assigned a private tutor for organic chemistry and spent 8 hours daily preparing for the coming semester. My art supplies remained packed away. My parents monitored my study schedule, and my mother checked my practice test scores daily. Allison's been accepted to the high school summer program at Stanford, she mentioned constantly. She's already thinking ahead to college applications. When I returned for sophomore year, Jessica immediately noticed the change in me. You look like you've been through a war, she said, hugging me. This is not okay, Selena. I'm fine, I insisted, unpacking my carefully organized study materials. I'd left my art supplies at home, too afraid of the distraction. But I wasn't fine. My hair began falling out in clumps. I lost 15 pounds off my already slim frame. I developed insomnia so severe that I was prescribed sleep medication. Still, I pushed through, determined not to disappoint my family again. Midway through the fall semester came the breaking point. During an important biology exam, the words on the page began shifting and swirling. The panic that had been my constant companion for months erupted into a full-blown breakdown. I ran from the lecture hall sobbing uncontrollably and collapsed in a stairwell. Jessica found me there an hour later, still unable to speak coherently. She took me directly to the university counseling center, where the therapist recommended an immediate medical leave of absence. "Your body is shutting down," she explained gently. "This isn't weakness. These are serious symptoms of anxiety and depression that require treatment." The call to my parents was the hardest of my life. Their reaction was worse than I'd feared. "A leave of absence," my father thundered. "Do you have any idea how this looks? My colleagues' children manage these same courses without mental health breaks." "You're throwing your life away because you can't handle a little pressure," he continued. "This is ridiculous, Selena, absolutely ridiculous." My mother's reaction cut even deeper. "Your sister would never embarrass us like this. She's 16 and already taking college-level courses. What are we supposed to tell people about you?" I spent the remainder of the semester in a blur of therapy appointments and medication adjustments. Jessica became my lifeline, bringing me food when I couldn't face the dining hall and sitting with me during panic attacks. By December, I'd reached a decision that terrified me, but also felt inevitable. When I went home for Christmas break, I gathered my courage and told my parents I wanted to change my major to studio art. The silence that followed was deafening. "After all we've invested in you," my father finally said, his voice dangerously quiet, "this is not happening." "I'm good at art," I whispered. "Really good. My professors think I could—" "I don't care what some community college dropout teaching art thinks," he interrupted. "No daughter of mine is wasting her life painting pictures." My mother was more calculated. "If you insist on this foolishness, you will do it without our financial support. No tuition, no housing, no expenses. Nothing." "You're 20 years old," my father added. "Old enough to ruin your life without our help." I looked at Allison hoping for support, but she stared at her plate, unwilling to risk standing against our parents. The ultimatum was clear: return to pre-med or be cut off completely. That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. I would leave school, pursue my art, and accept whatever consequences came with it. What I didn't anticipate was just how severe those consequences would be. "Jessica's family offered me their guest room. Until you figure things out." I accepted with tearful gratitude, having nowhere else to go, after cleaning out my dorm room in January. The small kindness of strangers contrasted sharply with my own family's rejection. I found a job waiting tables at a diner near campus, working 6 shifts a week to save money. Every night I returned to Jessica's family home, exhausted, my feet throbbing, smelling of grease and coffee. But I was free from the crushing weight of parental expectations for the first time in my life. 3 weeks after leaving school, my father called. I answered with a flutter of hope that he'd reconsidered, that he understood this was about my mental health, not laziness or rebellion. "We've decided to formalize our position," he said, his voice clinical and detached. "We will no longer provide any financial support. Your health insurance coverage ends next week. Your phone will remain active until the end of the month, after which that expense becomes yours as well." I struggled to find my voice. "Dad, please. I'm not throwing my life away. I'm trying to find a path that doesn't make me suicidal." His response burned into my memory forever. "You were always the ugly one, Selena. Now you're the ugly dropout. When you're ready to stop this nonsense and return to school properly, you can contact us." The line went dead before I could respond. I sat on Jessica's bed phone, still pressed to my ear, too shocked to cry. My mother sent a formal email the next day. "We have removed you from our family health insurance policy. All funds from your custodial account have been transferred to an education-only trust that will be released when you re-enroll in an approved program. Don't contact us again until you come to your senses." Allison's text was briefer but equally painful. "You're selfish. You've broken Mom and Dad's hearts. Don't call me either." I soon discovered the full extent of their rejection. My bank account, which had contained my small savings from summer jobs, had been emptied. My parents had been joint account holders since it was opened when I was 16, giving them legal access. The $326 I had carefully saved was gone. The social rejection expanded beyond immediate family. My parents' friends, people who had known me my entire life, crossed the street to avoid speaking to me. Cousins blocked me on social media. Extended family members who initially reached out with concern suddenly went silent, presumably after my parents contacted them. I heard through Jessica's network that my parents had created an elaborate cover story telling everyone I had experienced a mental break and was in a special treatment program. They were ashamed of me, not concerned for me. The financial reality hit hard. Without parental support, I couldn't afford rent, food, and art supplies, let alone college tuition. Jessica found me crying in the bathroom one night after discovering I had exactly $147 to my name and nowhere permanent to live. "I'm going to help you figure this out," she promised, sitting beside me on the cold tile floor. "You're not alone." True to her word, Jessica connected me with resources I never knew existed. She found a therapist willing to see me on a sliding scale. The diagnosis was clear: major depression and severe anxiety disorder, conditions I'd been struggling with silently for years. "What your parents did is emotional abuse," the therapist told me in our third session. "Withdrawing love and support because you won't fulfill their ambitions is not what healthy families do." Hearing someone name what I'd experienced was both validating and devastating. I wasn't crazy or weak or selfish. I was a young woman whose family had conditioned her to believe her only value lay in achievement they approved of. Jessica also helped me find a room to rent in a shared house with 4 other students at a price I could almost afford with my waitressing job. I picked up a second job stocking shelves at a grocery store overnight, working nearly 60 hours weekly just to survive. In rare moments between shifts, I sketched. Without money for proper supplies, I used ballpoint pens in discarded notebooks, drawing on napkins, creating art from the materials at hand. The pain of rejection flowed through these crude tools into raw emotional pieces that captured my journey. 3 months after being disowned, I discovered the community college offered art courses at a fraction of university tuition. I registered for one class, paying in installments with my tips. The first day I walked into that classroom with proper supplies borrowed from the department's lending program, I felt a spark of my old self returning. "You have significant technical ability," my instructor noted after reviewing my portfolio of makeshift art. "But more importantly, your work has authentic emotional depth. There's something here worth developing." Those words were the first validation I'd received in months. I held on to them like a lifeline as I continued working my grueling jobs and taking one class at a time, building skills and a portfolio on a painfully slow timeline. The loneliness was perhaps the hardest part. Holidays arrived with no invitations home, no calls, not even a text message. I spent Thanksgiving serving turkey to other people's families at the diner, then eating leftover pie in the break room. Christmas passed in similar fashion, working double shifts to earn holiday pay, while trying not to remember family traditions and opening presents by the fireplace. A full year after being cut off, I took stock of my situation. I was surviving, but barely. The constant work left me exhausted. My art education was progressing at a snail's pace, and my therapy sessions revealed I still carried deep wounds from my family's rejection. "You didn't deserve what happened to you," my therapist reminded me regularly. "Your worth isn't determined by their approval." I repeated these words to myself like a mantra on the darkest days when giving up seemed like the only option. Somehow, I kept going one painful step at a time, unaware that a breakthrough waited just around the corner. At the 1 year mark after being disowned, my life had fallen into a grueling but sustainable rhythm. Waitressing mornings at the diner, retail shifts at a clothing store afternoons, and 2 nights a week, posing as an art model for university drawing classes. Between jobs, I attended community college art courses and fell into exhausted sleep whenever time permitted. My small rented room contained little beyond a mattress on the floor, a salvaged desk, and stacks of drawings. The walls displayed my growing portfolio pieces that explored themes of identity, rejection, and resilience. Art had become both my therapy and my future. During a figure drawing class where I was the student, not the model, professor, Harper paused behind my easel longer than usual. "Your understanding of form is extraordinary," she said, studying my rendering of the model. "The emotional quality you bring to anatomical precision is quite unique." I thanked her politely, used to instructors noting my technical abilities. I'm curating a small show of emerging artists at the West Side Gallery next month, she continued. I'd like to include two of your pieces. My hand froze mid-stroke. Are you serious? Professor Harper smiled. Completely. Your work deserves to be seen. The evening of the gallery opening, I wore the only decent outfit I owned, a black dress purchased from the thrift store and altered to fit. My hands trembled as I watched people studying my paintings. Disowned. A stark portrayal of a family photo with one figure systematically erased, and Worth, an abstract piece using medical imagery to explore the commodification of human potential. A woman in expensive clothing studied Disowned for nearly 10 minutes before approaching me. Are you the artist? This piece speaks directly to my experience. Would you consider selling it? The price she offered for my painting exceeded 2 months' rent. When she handed me her check, I had to excuse myself to the bathroom, where I sobbed with a mixture of validation and relief. Someone valued my art enough to pay real money for it. The transaction felt like the universe contradicting my father's dismissal of my chosen path. With the proceeds, I purchased proper art supplies for the first time since leaving home and paid my community college tuition for the upcoming semester. More importantly, the sale validated my identity as a real artist, not just a failed pre-med student. In the months that followed, I developed a distinctive style that art critics would later describe as clinical precision meeting raw emotion. My background in science informed my technical approach, while my personal trauma provided the emotional content that made my work compelling. I created a series titled Expectations, exploring the psychological impact of family pressure through medical imagery. A brain scan where the pleasure centers only lit up in response to achievement. A heart constricted by invisible bands labeled approval and validation. A spine bent under weights representing parental ambitions. The local arts newspaper ran a small feature on emerging artists, including a paragraph about my work, and a photo of me beside Disowned. The exposure led to 2 more sales and commission inquiries. My social media accounts, once places of painful exclusion, as I watched former friends living normal college lives, became professional platforms where I shared my artistic journey. A small following grew people who connected with the themes of rejection and reinvention in my work. Professor Harper became my mentor, guiding my technical development and introducing me to opportunities I would never have found alone. When she learned about my financial struggles, she recommended me for a scholarship program at the State Art Institute. This would allow you to complete a formal degree while continuing to develop your unique voice, she explained. The scholarship covered tuition and provided a small stipend. For the first time since being cut off, I reduced my work hours to focus primarily on art education. The program compressed a 4-year degree into an intensive 2-year curriculum for students with exceptional portfolios and prior learning. I graduated with distinction 2 years later, my senior exhibition drawing attention from several galleries. The exhibition featured a triptych called Family Portraits, reimagining traditional family photography through the lens of emotional abuse. The center panel, a family portrait with the daughter figure screaming silently while the parents smiled placidly, was purchased by a psychological wellness center for their therapy rooms. Following graduation, I secured an internship at the Meridian Gallery, one of the city's more progressive art spaces. The internship led to a position as assistant curator 6 months later, providing my first stable income and health insurance since being disowned. My personal life slowly rebuilt as well. I formed friendships with fellow artists and gallery colleagues who accepted me without judgment. In group therapy, I learned to trust again, to believe that not everyone would abandon me if I failed to meet their expectations. At a gallery opening, I met Adam, a graphic designer, whose quiet confidence and genuine interest in my artistic perspective drew me in. Our first date lasted 6 hours, as we discussed art history, creative influences, and our personal journeys. My parents wanted me to take over the family accounting firm, he shared. It took 3 years of arguments before they accepted I needed to follow my own path. Mine still haven't accepted my choice, I admitted. They disowned me 4 years ago. Adam reached across the table and took my hand. Their loss, he said simply. You're extraordinary. Our relationship developed slowly as I worked through trust issues in therapy. Adam never pushed understanding my need for independence after experiencing such complete rejection. He celebrated my artistic achievements without making me feel my worth depended on success. When I saved enough for a security deposit, I moved into my first solo apartment, a small studio with good natural light for painting. The day I signed the lease, I realized how far I had come, from the desperate broke college dropout sleeping on Jessica's family's couch. Throughout these rebuilding years, my birth family remained completely absent. I sent a graduation announcement to their address more as a statement of survival than an invitation. It came back unopened, marked "Return to Sender." Through mutual acquaintances, I occasionally heard snippets about their lives. Allison had been accepted to a prestigious graduate program in economics. My parents had renovated their house, donated to the university medical school, taken luxury vacations. Life had continued for them as if I had never existed. On the 4th anniversary of being disowned, I wrote one final letter to my family, not begging for reconciliation, but offering it from a position of strength. I am building a successful life as an artist and curator. I have found people who value me for who I am, not what I achieve. I remain open to healing our relationship if you can accept the person I've become. The letter, like my graduation announcement, came back unopened. I placed it in a box with other artifacts of my former life and stored it on a high shelf. The rejection still hurt, but it no longer defined me. I had created an identity and purpose entirely separate from their narrow vision of success. What I didn't realize was that life was about to bring us face to face again in circumstances I could never have imagined. My career progression from assistant curator to associate curator at the Meridian Gallery happened faster than anyone expected. The gallery director recognized my unusual ability to arrange exhibitions that told compelling emotional stories through artwork placement and juxtaposition. "You have an instinct for creating dialogue between pieces," she told me when offering the promotion. "Visitors leave our shows talking about how the experience made them feel." The promotion came with a substantial salary increase, allowing me to invest in a small studio space separate from my apartment. In the sanctuary, I created my most personal work, yet pieces that directly confronted the trauma of family rejection and the painful rebuilding process. My first major solo exhibition, simply titled "Expectations," opened to unexpected critical acclaim. Local art reviewers praised the raw emotional authenticity and unflinching examination of familial psychological abuse. The city's arts magazine featured a 2-page spread on my work, including a profile that mentioned my background. I spoke candidly about being disowned for choosing art over medicine, though I didn't name my family. The work emerges from personal experience, I explained in the interview, but speaks to universal themes of conditional love and the search for authentic identity separate from others' expectations. The article caught the attention of the National Association of Mental Health Arts Programs, who commissioned me to create an installation piece for their annual conference. The resulting work, Excision, depicted a life-size family dinner table where one place setting was being systematically erased, the chair splintering the plate, shattering in slow motion. The installation resonated deeply with viewers, many sharing their own stories of family estrangement and rejection. It went viral on social media, with thousands sharing images and personal responses. A video tour of the piece reached over 1 million views, bringing attention from major art publications. This unexpected visibility led to an invitation I never anticipated guest lecturer at several prestigious universities about the intersection of art, mental health, and personal narrative. The invitation included Westmore University, known for its excellent economics program. "They're particularly interested in your perspective on art as a healing modality," my agent explained. "The honorarium is substantial, and it would significantly raise your profile in academic circles." I accepted the opportunity primarily as a career advancement step, not connecting it to my past. It wasn't until I reviewed the detailed itinerary that I noticed Westmore was where Allison was pursuing her graduate studies in economics. The realization sent me into a spiral of anxiety. I could decline just this university. I considered discussing the situation with my therapist, avoid the potential encounter entirely. "What would declining represent to you?" she asked. "Protection or continued avoidance?" The question lingered as I weighed my options. Professionally, the lecture series represented significant recognition. Personally, it risked reopening wounds that had taken years to heal. I've spent 5 years rebuilding my life. I finally decided. I won't let fear of my family dictate my professional choices anymore. I arrived at Westmore University on a crisp autumn day, the campus ablaze with fall colors. Professor Daniels' chair of the Arts and Psychology Interdisciplinary Program greeted me warmly. Your work on trauma expression through visual media has generated significant interest across departments, he explained while showing me to the lecture hall. We have students from psychology, art therapy, and even economics registered for your talk. The mention of economics sent a jolt of anxiety through me, but I maintained my professional composure. The lecture hall filled with students and faculty, and I scanned the audience nervously for Allison's face. Not seeing her brought both relief and a strange disappointment. My presentation, Visualizing Trauma Art as Testimony and Healing, included slides of my most personal works alongside clinical discussion of art therapy principles. I shared my experience of using art to process rejection without specifically mentioning my family. When traditional support systems fail, I explained showing an image of excision creative expression can provide both testimony to the experience and a pathway to reclaiming narrative control. The audience response was overwhelmingly positive, with thoughtful questions and engagement. As the formal session ended, students clustered around me, sharing how the work had touched them personally. The vulnerability in these exchanges reminded me why I had chosen this path, despite its difficulties. At the faculty reception afterward, Professor Daniels introduced me to colleagues from various departments. Your lecture resonated deeply with our therapeutic approach, a psychology professor commented. Have you considered developing a formal workshop series? As we discussed possibilities, Professor Daniels mentioned, I'm disappointed my star economics student couldn't attend today. Allison Harper has been integrating psychological perspectives into her economic models of family decision-making. Your work would have provided valuable insights for her research. I nearly dropped my glass at the mention of my sister's name, but recovered quickly. Harper is a common name, I responded noncommittally. Indeed, though in this case there's quite the pedigree. Her father is a renowned surgeon, her mother a corporate attorney. Achievement runs in the family. I nodded politely while my heart raced. Professor Daniels had no idea he was describing my parents to their disowned daughter. We're having a special department reception following tomorrow's graduation ceremony, he continued. Many of our graduating students and their families will attend. Would you consider joining us? Your presence would add prestige to the event. My immediate instinct was to decline to protect myself from a potential painful encounter. But a deeper part of me, the part that had been rebuilding courage for 5 years, recognized this as a moment of choice. I'd be honored, I heard myself say, uncertain if I was being brave or foolish. That night in my hotel room, I barely slept, alternating between anxiety about facing my family and rehearsing what I might say if confronted. By morning, I had settled on a simple approach I would attend. As the accomplished professional, I had become neither seeking confrontation nor hiding from it. The graduation ceremony was held in the university's grand auditorium. As a visiting lecturer, I was seated in the faculty section, providing a perfect view of the audience. Midway through scanning the crowd, I froze. There they were, 3 rows from the front, my father, his hair now silver at the temples, my mother, her posture still rigidly perfect, and between them, an empty seat presumably saved for whoever was accompanying Allison. When the economics department graduates were announced, I watched Allison cross the stage to receive her honors degree. She looked thinner than I remembered, her smile tight rather than joyful. I felt an unexpected surge of concern, wondering if she too suffered under the weight of our parents' expectations. The department reception afterward was held in an elegant campus building with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens. I positioned myself strategically in a corner, accepting congratulations from faculty who had attended my lecture while keeping one eye on the entrance. My family arrived fashionably late. My parents, the picture of successful professionals, Allison between them, looking simultaneously accomplished and constrained. They hadn't seen me yet, giving me time to observe the dynamics between them. My mother's hand rarely left Allison's elbow, subtly directing her movements. My father performed his well-practiced role of the distinguished surgeon, accepting congratulations for his daughter's achievement, as if he had earned the degree himself. Allison nodded and smiled on cue, a perfect reflection of their expectations. I recognized that performance all too well. I had lived it for 20 years. Professor Daniels spotted me and waved enthusiastically. Dr. Harper, Mrs. Harper, let me introduce you to our distinguished guest lecturer. My stomach dropped as he headed directly toward my family, clearly intending to bring them to me. I straightened my shoulders and prepared for the inevitable collision of my past and present. Allison, your professor mentioned you couldn't make the lecture yesterday. Let me introduce you to an extraordinary artist whose work on family dynamics would complement your research wonderfully. Professor Daniels led my sister directly to me, oblivious to the brewing storm. Allison's eyes widened in shock as recognition dawned. This is Selena, our guest lecturer on art and psychological trauma. Selena, this is our honor graduate, Allison Harper. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Allison stared at me. Professor Daniels looked between us, confusion evident. You know each other? He finally asked. I smiled calmly, meeting my sister's gaze directly. You have no idea, I replied, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. Across the room, my parents noticed the exchange. My father's face drained of color. My mother froze mid-conversation, her social mask slipping for the first time in my memory. Selena, Allison whispered, as if confirming I wasn't an apparition. You're the guest lecturer everyone's talking about. Before I could respond, our parents approached, moving with the urgency of people rushing to contain a public relations disaster. Allison, we should greet the dean, my mother interjected, attempting to steer my sister away from me. Actually, Diana, I said, using my mother's first name deliberately. Professor Daniels was just saying how Allison and I have research interests that align. Family dynamics is such a fascinating field, isn't it? My mother's face tightened at my use of her name, a small rebellion against her attempt to pretend I was a stranger. Selena, my father acknowledged stiffly, clearly struggling to maintain his composed facade. This is unexpected. For all of us, Thomas, I replied with the same formality. Congratulations on Allison's achievement. The economics department speaks very highly of her work. Professor Daniels looked increasingly puzzled by the tension. I'm sorry, have I missed something? You're acquainted? You could say that, I offered with a small smile. Allison is my sister. The professor's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Sister? But your last name? I use my grandmother's name professionally. I explained, never breaking eye contact with my father. Harper has too many expectations attached to it. I had no idea, Professor Daniels said, looking between us. Allison never mentioned a sister who's a renowned artist. Did she not? I asked mildly. How interesting. My mother attempted damage control. Families are complicated, Professor. If you'll excuse us, we should really… Actually, Allison interrupted, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. I'd like to catch up with my sister. It's been 5 years since we've spoken. The shock on our parents' faces mirrored my own. This was not the compliant Allison I remembered. Of course, Professor Daniels said enthusiastically, still missing the undercurrents. Family reunions are what graduation is all about. And Selena, now I understand why your work on family expectations resonates so powerfully. It must be fascinating having two such accomplished daughters, he added to my parents, one in economics and one in the arts. My father managed a tight nod while my mother maintained her frozen smile. Other faculty members joined our uncomfortable circle, praising my lecture, and Allison's thesis, unaware they were witnessing a family drama 5 years in the making. Your installation piece at the mental health conference was revolutionary, one art professor commented. The way you captured family rejection was visceral. My parents visibly flinched. Selena's work explores important psychological terrain, Professor Daniels explained to my clearly uncomfortable parents. Her personal experience with family estrangement has informed groundbreaking artistic expressions of trauma and recovery. I hadn't shared those details in my public lecture, but clearly the faculty had researched my background. My mother's complexion paled further. We're so proud of Selena's accomplishments, she lied smoothly, reaching to touch my arm in a show of maternal affection. I stepped subtly away from her touch. That's new, I commented quietly. As the reception continued, my parents performed their roles flawlessly for the academic crowd, pretending we were a normal family, having a typical reunion. Only the tension in their shoulders and the tightness around their eyes revealed the truth. When a moment presented itself, Allison pulled me aside, her voice low and urgent. "I followed your career," she confessed. "Your exhibition reviews the installation everything. I couldn't tell them, but I've been watching you succeed all along." The admission stunned me. "You never reached out." "I was afraid," she admitted, glancing toward our parents. "I still am. But seeing you here so accomplished, so confident, I've missed you, Selena." For the first time in 5 years, I saw my sister, rather than an extension of my parents. The realization that she too might be struggling under their expectations opened a door I thought permanently closed. "Coffee tomorrow," I suggested. Without the audience, Allison nodded relief washing over her face. "I'd like that very much." As the reception wound down, I maintained my professional demeanor, accepting congratulations and exchanging contact information with interested faculty. My parents made a calculated early departure, clearly uncomfortable with their inability to control the narrative. In my hotel room that night, I called Adam and recounted the surreal encounter. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Surprisingly, yes. I realized. For the first time since they cut me off, I didn't feel diminished by their presence. I've built something they can't take away. "I'm proud of you," Adam said simply. "Thank you," I replied, understanding now how powerful those words could be when offered without conditions. The coffee shop Allison suggested was located off campus, away from faculty and family eyes. I arrived early, claiming a quiet corner table and ordering herbal tea to calm my nerves. When she entered, I was struck by how exhausted she looked beneath her polished exterior. "You look great," she said, settling across from me. "Really great. Success suits you." "You look tired," I replied honestly. She laughed, a genuine sound I hadn't heard in years. "That's what I've missed. Everyone else tells me how perfect everything is." "I'm not everyone else," I reminded her. "No, you never were." She stirred her coffee absently. "That's why they couldn't handle you leaving the script." "How bad was it after I left?" I asked the question that had lingered for years. Allison sighed deeply. "Publicly, they controlled the narrative completely. You were taking time for yourself at first, then studying abroad, then simply not mentioned. But privately, Dad drank more. Mom became even more controlling. The house felt like a mausoleum. And you became the sole repository of their expectations." I observed. "The pressure doubled overnight," she confirmed. "Every achievement was shadowed by comments about not disappointing them like you did. Your name became synonymous with failure in our house." The revelation hurt despite my years of therapy. "I'm sorry they put that on you." "Don't apologize," she said firmly. "Watching them disown you for choosing your own path was my first clue something was deeply wrong with our family. It took me years to process, but it changed everything for me." She reached into her bag and withdrew a business card for a therapist. "I've been seeing Dr. Levine for 2 years, in secret, of course." I stared at the card, stunned. "You're in therapy." "Your breakdown gave me permission to acknowledge my own anxiety," she explained. "I've had panic attacks since sophomore year of high school. I just got better at hiding them than you did." They never knew. They still don't. I've become expert at maintaining appearances while falling apart inside. She looked down at her hands. "I've been following your career online, your artwork about family expectations. It was like you were painting my experience too." "Why didn't you ever contact me?" I asked the question that had haunted me for years. "Fear," she admitted. Then shame. The longer it went on, the harder it became. I convinced myself you probably hated me for siding with them. "I was hurt," I acknowledged, "but I understood the position they put you in." "I've been building my own escape plan," she confided. "This economics degree isn't leading to the corporate career they expect. I've been accepted to a humanitarian economics program in developing nations. I leave in 3 months." "Have you told them?" Her laugh held little humor. "Not yet. I'm working up the courage seeing how you survived being cut off. Though my situation is different. I've been quietly saving money for years, preparing for potential fallout." "Inspired by my example?" I asked, surprised. "More than you know," she confirmed. "Watching you rebuild your life showed me it was possible to exist outside their approval. Your art career gave me hope that following my own path could lead to success and fulfillment." We talked for hours, filling in the 5-year gap in our relationship. I shared the brutal details of my first year after being disowned, the jobs, the poverty, the isolation. She revealed her growing resentment of our parents' control and her secret preparations for independence. They want me to meet with their friend's son next week, she confided. He's a suitable match according to Dad. Harvard Medical School family money, the works. And you don't want that? I guessed. There's someone else, she admitted, blushing slightly. Marcos. He teaches at a community clinic in Guatemala. I met him during a research project. Dad would never approve. Because he's not wealthy, I asked. That, and he's dedicated to serving indigenous communities rather than building a prestigious career. Plus, not white. She grimaced. Mom would have a society meltdown. The revelation of my sister's secret life behind the perfect facade transformed my understanding of our family dynamics. She hadn't been the favored child so much as the last remaining vessel for their ambitions after I escaped. Will you meet with them? Allison asked suddenly. Mom and Dad, they're still in town until tomorrow. My stomach tightened at the suggestion. Why would they want to see me? They wouldn't admit it, but your success has shaken them. The faculty praising you, the recognition you've achieved. It contradicts their narrative about what happens to children who disobey. I considered the request carefully. I'm not looking for reconciliation or approval, I cautioned. I've built a life without those things. I know, she said. Maybe that's exactly why they need to hear from you. After careful consideration, I agreed to a brief meeting the following morning. Not for my parents' sake, but for Allison's, and perhaps for final closure on my own journey. We met in the hotel restaurant, a neutral public space, where social appearances would prevent any dramatic scenes. My parents arrived precisely on time, dressed impeccably as always. Selena, my father acknowledged stiffly. You're looking well. Success agrees with me, I replied simply, watching him flinch slightly at the implication. My mother attempted warmth. We were quite impressed by how the faculty spoke of your work. Were you impressed or relieved I hadn't become the failure you predicted? I asked calmly. The direct question disrupted her social script. That's hardly fair, she protested. Isn't it? I raised an eyebrow. You cut me off completely, emptied my bank account, and told family friends I had a mental breakdown rather than admit I chose a different path than you planned. My father cleared his throat. We may have overreacted. He offered the closest thing to an apology his pride would allow. You disowned your daughter for choosing art over medicine. I corrected. Then spent 5 years pretending I didn't exist. We were concerned about your stability, my mother attempted. The way you left school, the anxiety issues, the mental health problems you ignored until they became a crisis. I interrupted. The same issues Allison has been hiding from you, because she saw how you responded to mine. Their shocked expressions confirmed Allison hadn't revealed her own therapy. We only wanted what was best for you, my father insisted. No, I countered. You wanted what you thought reflected best on you. There's a significant difference. The conversation continued in this vein, my parents attempting justifications, while I calmly named the reality of their actions. They had come expecting either my gratitude for their conditional reacceptance or ammunition to prove I was still the failure they had branded me. Instead, they found a confident, successful woman who no longer needed their approval. I didn't come here seeking reconciliation, I explained as our uncomfortable meeting concluded. I built a fulfilling life career and support system without you. Any relationship moving forward would be on entirely new terms, beginning with acknowledgement of the harm you caused. You can't possibly expect us to apologize for wanting you to succeed, my father protested. No, I expect you to recognize that I have succeeded, just not in the way you prescribed, I corrected. And I expect you to understand that your acceptance is no longer necessary for my happiness. I left them with my business card, not my personal contact information. If you're ever ready for an honest relationship based on who I actually am, rather than who you wanted me to be, my gallery can reach me. Returning to my apartment and studio the following day felt like coming home to reality after a surreal dream. Adam welcomed me with understanding and space to process the emotional aftermath. How do you feel? He asked as we shared dinner that evening. Lighter, I realized. like I've put down a weight I didn't know I was still carrying. The encounter transformed into new art. I began a series called Reconciliation that explored the complex emotions of family confrontation without resolution. The question mark in the title was deliberate acknowledging that true reconciliation might never come. When the series debuted 2 months later, Allison attended the opening reception. She came alone, having told our parents she was at an economics conference. "They sent this," she said, handing me a card. Inside was a formal congratulations note signed with their full names rather than Mom and Dad. It wasn't forgiveness or acceptance, merely acknowledgement of my professional achievement. "It's something," Allison offered hopefully. "It's exactly what I expected," I replied without bitterness. "How are your plans progressing?" "I leave for Guatemala next month," she revealed. "I told them last week." "How did they take it?" "About as well as they took your news," she sighed. "Though they didn't quite disown me. Just emotional manipulation, guilt trips, and threats about my trust fund." "Are you okay?" I asked, recognizing the pain beneath her casual description. "I'm following my sister's example," she said with a genuine smile, "building a life based on my values rather than their expectations." As I watched her move confidently through the gallery, I realized my painful journey had created an unexpected legacy. My sister had found courage through my example, and my artwork was helping others recognize and heal from similar family dynamics. This realization led to my most meaningful project yet. With seed funding from my gallery, I established the Authentic Paths Foundation, providing mentorship and resources to young artists from controlling family backgrounds. The foundation offered workshops, supplies, and even emergency housing for those cut off like I had been. At our first workshop, 20 young artists gathered to explore using creative expression to process family trauma. As I shared my story, I saw recognition and hope in their faces. Your worth was never dependent on meeting someone else's expectations. I told them words I had needed desperately to hear at 20. The most powerful art comes from embracing your authentic self, even when that means walking away from conditional love. Through these young artists, my own painful journey found purpose. Each person who reclaimed their creative identity and built a life aligned with their true self became part of a larger narrative of resistance and authenticity. 5 years after being labeled the ugly college dropout and cut off by my family, I had not only survived but created a life of meaning and impact. My relationship with my parents remained distant, occasional formal communications, rather than true reconciliation. My bond with Allison, however, grew stronger as we both embraced our authentic paths. The greatest victory wasn't financial success or professional recognition, though those came in time. It was the profound realization that family isn't determined by blood or obligation, but by those who truly see and accept you. I had created that family through friendship, love, and mentorship of others walking similar paths. In my studio, I keep one painting that has never been exhibited. It shows a young woman at a crossroads, one path leading toward external approval and success, as defined by others, the other toward the unknown territory of authentic self-expression. Her foot is firmly planted on the second path, face turned toward the future, rather than looking back at what she's leaving behind. This painting reminds me daily that the most important journey we take is toward becoming who we truly are, not who others expect us to be. And that journey, however difficult, is always worth the cost. Have you ever had to choose between meeting others' expectations and following your authentic path? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to join our community of people choosing authenticity over approval. Remember that your worth is never determined by someone else's narrow definition of success. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it gives you strength for your own.